The Velkari had never asked anyone for help. For 12,000 years, their people had lived among the stars in peace. They built beautiful stations that floated in the darkness of space. They collected knowledge. They studied the universe. They wrote down the history of every species they met. They were teachers and thinkers, not fighters. They had no weapons. They had no warships. They had never needed them. But tonight, everything changed. High Archivist Toral 7 stood in the command center of Station Meridian, watching her world fall apart. Red warning lights flashed everywhere. Alarms screamed through the corridors. Through the large windows, she could see them. 3 massive ships that looked like they were made of metal and flesh twisted together. They had appeared from nowhere 2 hours ago, and they had not answered any attempt at communication. They were called the Scourge. Toral 7 had read about them in the old records. They were harvesters. They did not conquer worlds or make demands. They simply took everything: resources, technology, and living beings. No one knew what they did with the people they captured. No one who was taken ever came back. The station shook as another impact rocked through its frame. Toral 7 grabbed the console to keep herself from falling. Her compound eyes, large and dark like pools of oil, reflected the fires burning on the outer sections of the station. "High Archivist," her assistant called out, his voice shaking with fear. "They have breached the outer ring. Our barriers are failing. We have maybe 4 hours before they reach the central sections." 4 hours. Toral 7 looked at the internal monitors. Over 3,000 of her people were aboard this station. Families, children, scholars who had spent their lives studying the peaceful arts of knowledge. None of them knew how to fight. None of them had ever held a weapon. She made her decision. "Open all emergency channels," she ordered. "Broadcast on every frequency we can reach. Send a distress call to anyone who can hear us." Her communications officer hesitated. "High Archivist, we have sent requests to the Galactic Council. They said intervention would take too long and cost too many resources. The other species in this sector have already said they will not help. No one is coming. Then we ask everyone," Toral 7 said firmly. "Every species, every ship, every station. Someone out there must answer." She walked to the communication console herself and began to speak. Her voice was calm, but inside she was terrified. "This is High Archivist Toral 7 of Station Meridian. We are under attack by hostile forces. We are a peaceful people. We have no weapons and no way to defend ourselves. There are 3,000 of us aboard this station, including many children. We are asking, begging, anyone who can hear this, please help us. Please." The message went out into the darkness of space. It bounced off relay stations and traveled through communication networks. It reached dozens of species on hundreds of worlds. Most of them did exactly what the Galactic Council had done. They calculated the distance. They considered the risk. They decided it was not worth it. They sent polite messages expressing their sympathy and did nothing else. But the message also reached a ship called the TMS Resolute. The Resolute was a Terran marine assault carrier, a large warship built by humans. It was on a routine patrol near the edge of Terran space, far from any active conflict. The crew was bored. They had been running training exercises for weeks with nothing real to do. Communications. Officer Katie Dunn was the first to hear the distress call. She was a young woman with short brown hair and quick hands on her console. When the message came through, she listened to it twice. The translation software made the alien voice sound strange, but the meaning was clear. Someone was dying out there. Someone was asking for help. Katie immediately contacted the bridge. "Captain, you need to hear this." Captain Marcus Cole was sitting in his command chair, reviewing patrol reports that he had already read 3 times. He was 52 years old, with gray hair at his temples, and a face that had seen many battles. When Katie played the message for him, he sat very still. "How far?" he asked. 14 hours at maximum speed, sir. It is outside our patrol zone. We do not have authorization to." "I did not ask about authorization." Cole stood up from his chair. Commander Vance, sound General Quarters. I want all Marines ready for combat boarding operations. Helm, plot a course to these coordinates. Maximum burn. Commander Lisa Vance was his second in command. She was a tall woman with dark skin and steady eyes that never showed fear. She had served with Cole for 8 years and knew him well. She did not question the order. Aye, Captain. General Quarters, all hands. The alarms changed tone. Throughout the ship, sailors and Marines stopped what they were doing and ran to their stations. In the barracks, soldiers grabbed their weapons and armor. In the engine room, technicians began pushing the reactor to its limits. Cole opened a channel to the Marine commander. Major Reeves, get your people ready. We are going into a hostile situation. There are civilians in danger, including children. We do not know exactly what we are facing, but we know they need us. Major Pete Reeves was a serious man with a shaved head and arms covered in old scars. He had been a Marine for 20 years. He had seen combat on a dozen worlds. When he heard the captain's message, he simply nodded. Understood, Captain. My Marines will be ready. Down in the hangar, 200 Marines began preparing for war. They checked their rifles. They loaded their ammunition. They helped each other put on their heavy combat armor. Some of them were young, barely out of training. Others were veterans who had faced death many times before. Private First Class Joey Hart was one of the young ones. He was 23 years old, with a round face and nervous hands. As he loaded his rifle, the Marine next to him noticed his shaking fingers. First real mission? The older Marine asked. Joey nodded. Yes, Sergeant. Sergeant Amy Nolan was 31 years old. She had a scar across her chin and eyes that had seen too much death. But when she looked at the young private, her expression softened. Just stay close to me, she said. Do what I do. Shoot what I shoot. We take care of each other out here. That is how we survive. On the bridge, Captain Cole stared out at the stars. He knew he was breaking protocol. He knew command might punish him for this. He did not care. Somewhere out there, children were huddled in the dark, waiting to die. They had called for help, probably not expecting anyone to answer. But humans answered. That was what they did. Helm, Cole said quietly. Get us there as fast as this ship can move. The Resolute turned toward the darkness, and its engines roared to life. Help was coming. Station Meridian was dying slowly. The scourge ships had wrapped themselves around the outer sections like parasites feeding on a wounded animal. Black tendrils, thick as trees and pulsing with strange energy, had broken through the hull in dozens of places. Where they touched, metal rusted and crumbled. Where they spread, lights flickered and died. High Archivist Toral 7 had moved all the survivors to the central archive chamber. It was the strongest part of the station, built to protect the knowledge stored inside from any disaster. Now it protected something more valuable, 3,000 living souls. The chamber was large, with high ceilings covered in glowing symbols that told the history of the Velkari people. Normally, it was a place of quiet study. Now, it was filled with the sounds of fear. Children cried in their parents' arms. The wounded groaned on makeshift beds. The air recyclers struggled to keep up with so many people breathing the same air. Toral 7 walked among her people, trying to offer comfort she did not feel. A young mother grabbed her arm as she passed. High Archivist, are we going to die? Toral 7 looked into the young mother's eyes. She wanted to lie. She wanted to say that everything would be fine. But the Velkari valued truth above all things. They did not lie, even when the truth was terrible. I do not know, she said softly, but we will face whatever comes together. She moved on before the mother could see her own fear. At the main console, her chief engineer was monitoring the station's failing systems. His name was Coral 3, and he was the oldest Velkari on the station. His shell was cracked with age, and his movements were slow, but his mind was still sharp. The inner doors will hold for perhaps 2 more hours, he reported. After that, nothing will stop them from reaching us. 2 hours. Toral 7 had sent her distress call 6 hours ago. If help was coming, it would have arrived by now. She had accepted this truth. She had begun to prepare her people for the end. Then her communications console made a sound. It was a response. A voice, rough and strange, speaking through heavy static. The translator struggled with the accent, but the words came through clearly. Station Meridian. This is Captain Marcus Cole of the Terran Marine ship Resolute. We received your distress call. We are coming to help you. Hold your position and protect your people. We will arrive in approximately 8 hours. Toral 7 felt something she had never felt before. Her translator did not have a word for it. The closest concept in her language was unexpected light in darkness. She rushed to the console. Captain Cole, I am High Archivist Toril 7. I am grateful beyond words for your response. But I must tell you the truth. The hostile forces will breach our final defenses in less than 2 hours. By the time you arrive, we will already be lost. There was a pause. When the human voice returned, it carried something hard underneath the warmth. Something fierce. Then we will get there faster. Do not give up, High Archivist. We are coming. Resolute out. The connection ended. Toral 7 stood still for a long moment, trying to understand what had just happened. A species she had never met, from a world she had never visited, had heard her cry for help and changed course to answer it. They were flying toward danger for strangers. It made no logical sense. The Velcari had studied hundreds of species. Most of them acted based on careful calculation of costs and benefits. They did not risk themselves for others unless there was something to gain. What did the humans hope to gain? On the Resolute, Captain Cole was asking his chief engineer to do the impossible. Danny Marsh was a short man with thick arms and grease permanently stained into his fingers. He had been building and fixing starship engines for 30 years. He knew exactly what his ship could do and what it could not do. Captain, he said, rubbing his tired eyes, you are asking me to cut 8 hours down to 6. Maybe less. The engines are not designed for that kind of sustained output. The reactor could crack. The whole ship could shake itself apart. Cole looked at him steadily. Danny, there are children on that station. Little ones who have never hurt anyone. In 2 hours, they are going to be taken by something that will do terrible things to them. I need you to give me more speed. Danny was quiet for a moment. He thought about his own daughter, back home on Earth. She was 7 years old. She liked to draw pictures of spaceships and tape them to the refrigerator. I will give you 5.5 hours, he said finally. But you are buying me a new engine when this one melts. Cole put a hand on his shoulder. Done. Danny turned to his engineering team. They were young, most of them, but they were good. All right, everyone. We are going to push this reactor beyond anything it was built to handle. I need everyone focused. No mistakes. Lives depend on us. They got to work. In the Marine barracks, the soldiers were preparing in their own way. Some of them cleaned their weapons for the 3rd or 4th time. Some of them wrote messages to their families, just in case. Some of them prayed. Sergeant Amy Nolan sat on her bunk, checking her rifle. Next to her, Private Joey Hart was pale and quiet. You scared? Nolan asked. Joey nodded. I have never done anything like this before. What if I freeze? What if I get someone killed? Nolan set down her rifle and looked at him. Listen to me, kid. Everyone is scared before a fight. Everyone. The ones who say they are not scared are either lying or crazy. Fear is normal. Fear keeps you alive. Then how do you do it? How do you fight when you are afraid? Nolan thought about it. You find something more important than your fear. Something worth fighting for. Those people on that station, they are helpless. They cannot save themselves. If we do not help them, no one will. That is what I think about when I am scared. Not myself, them. Joey was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. Okay. I think I understand. Good. Nolan stood up. Now get your gear ready. We have work to do. On the bridge, Captain Cole watched the stars blur past as the Resolute pushed itself to its limits. The ship was groaning. Warning lights were appearing on consoles throughout the bridge. Commander Vance reported damage to secondary systems every few minutes, but they were getting faster. Cole thought about the voice he had heard in that distress call. The alien had sounded so hopeless, so certain that no one would come. She had probably sent that message expecting it to be ignored, just like all the others, but she had sent it anyway. She had hoped anyway. That was something Cole understood. Hope was not about expecting good things to happen. Hope was about refusing to give up, even when everything seemed lost. It was about reaching out into the darkness and believing that someone might reach back. The humans had reached back. Now they just had to get there in time. In the archive chamber of Station Meridian, Toral 7 shared the news with her people. She told them that help was coming. She told them about the humans, a species known for their strange stubbornness and their willingness to fight for others. For the first time in hours, the crying stopped. The Velkari looked at each other with something new in their eyes. Hope. It was an alien concept to them, aggressive and irrational. But as the hours passed, and they waited in the darkness, they began to understand it. Someone was coming. Someone had heard them. They just had to hold on. The Resolute dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a sound like thunder. The whole ship shook violently. Consoles sparked. Lights flickered. Somewhere deep in the engineering section, something important cracked and began to leak, but they had made it. Captain Cole stood from his command chair and looked through the main view screen. What he saw made his stomach turn. Station Meridian was barely recognizable. The beautiful crystalline structure he had seen in the mission briefing was now wrapped in darkness. Black tendrils covered every surface, pulsing like veins carrying poisoned blood. Fires burned in the outer sections. Debris floated in the space around it, and the Scourge ships were still there. 3 of them, each one larger than the Resolute. They looked like nightmares made solid, part machine, part living creature, covered in spines and strange growths. They had not noticed the Terran ship yet. They were focused on their meal. All hands, this is the captain, Cole announced over the ship's speakers. We have arrived at Station Meridian. The situation is bad. The enemy is bigger than us, and there are more of them. But there are 3,000 innocent people on that station, and they are counting on us. Today we show the galaxy what Terran Marines are made of. All departments, begin operation. Let's bring these people home. In the hangar bay, Major Pete Reeves stood in front of his Marines. They were lined up in perfect rows, 200 soldiers in heavy combat armor. Their helmets hid their faces, but Reeves knew what they were feeling. He felt it too. Listen up, he said, his voice hard as iron. The people on that station have never fought a war. They have never held a weapon. They are scholars and teachers, and parents and children. Right now, they are huddled in a room, waiting to die, because they had the courage to ask for help. He paused. We are the help. We go in fast. We hit hard. And we do not stop until every single civilian is safe. No one gets left behind. Understood? Hoorah! 200 voices shouted together. Then get to your dropships. We launch in 2 minutes. The Marines moved with practiced speed. They loaded into the armored dropships, checking their weapons one last time. The pilots started their engines. The hangar doors began to open. On the bridge, Commander Lisa Vance was coordinating the space battle. The Scourge ships had finally noticed the Resolute. They were turning toward her, weapons charging. All batteries, open fire, Vance ordered. Target the nearest harvester. Keep them focused on us and away from the dropships. The Resolute's guns roared to life. Bright beams of energy slammed into the Scourge ship, burning holes in its strange flesh. The creature screamed, a sound that traveled through space as vibrations that made the Resolute's hull ring like a bell. Then it fired back. The impact threw crew members from their seats. Alarms blared throughout the ship. Damage reports flooded in from every section. Hull breach on Deck 4. Fire suppression activated. We lost the secondary sensor array. Medical teams to engineering. Multiple casualties. Vance gripped her console tightly. Hold position. Keep firing. The Marines need time. The dropships launched into the chaos. They were small and fast. designed to slip through enemy fire and deliver soldiers directly into combat. Pilot specialist Angela Cruz was flying the lead ship, her hands steady on the controls despite the explosions all around her. 30 seconds to the station, she announced. Brace for breach. The dropship hit the station's hull at full speed. The armored nose punched through the weakened metal. Before the ship had even stopped moving, the rear ramp dropped, and Marines poured out. Sergeant Amy Nolan was first through the door. The corridor in front of her was filled with smoke and flickering emergency lights. Somewhere ahead, she could hear sounds that did not belong to any machine. Wet, clicking sounds. Hungry sounds. "Contact front," she shouted, raising her rifle. They came out of the smoke like shadows with claws. The Scourge ground forces were smaller than their ships, but no less terrifying. They walked on 4 legs and had arms that ended in blades instead of hands. Their heads were smooth and featureless except for mouths filled with needle-like teeth. Nolan fired. The first creature fell. More came. "Hold the line," she yelled. "Protect the flanks." The Marines fought with everything they had. The corridor became a storm of bullets and blood. Private Joey Hart was at Nolan's side, his fear forgotten in the chaos. He fired again and again, each shot finding its target. A creature lunged at him from the side. He did not see it coming. Nolan did. She threw herself between Joey and the monster, taking the blow meant for him. Its blade cut through her armor and into her shoulder. She screamed, but she did not fall. Instead, she pressed her rifle against the creature's head and pulled the trigger. "Sergeant," Joey grabbed her as she stumbled. "You are hurt. I can still fight," she said through gritted teeth. "Keep moving. We have to reach the civilians." Major Reeves was leading another squad through a different section of the station. The Scourge were everywhere, pouring out of the walls like insects from a disturbed nest. His Marines cut through them with discipline and fury, but they were taking losses. "Major," Corporal Dana Price called out. "We are running low on ammunition. Then make every shot count." Reeves fired 3 rounds, dropping 3 enemies. "The archive chamber is just ahead." "We are almost there." They reached the inner doors at the same moment as a massive wave of Scourge. The creatures had gathered for a final assault on the last survivors. There were hundreds of them, more than the Marines could possibly defeat. Reeves did not hesitate. "All units, form a defensive line. Nothing gets through." The fighting was brutal. Marines fell. Creatures died. The floor became slippery with blood from both sides. Inside the archive chamber, the Velkari could hear the battle through the doors. High Archivist Toral 7 held a young child close to her, covering his ears so he would not hear the screaming. Then the doors opened. Toral 7 expected monsters. Instead, she saw humans. Major Reeves stepped through the doorway, his armor cracked and covered in gore. Behind him, his surviving Marines formed a protective circle around the opening. They were battered and bleeding, but they were standing. "High Archivist Toral 7? Reeves asked. "Yes," she managed to say. "Ma'am, I am Major Pete Reeves, Terran Marines. We are here to get you out. Please gather your people and prepare for evacuation." Toral 7 stared at him. This creature, this human, had come through fire and death to reach her. He was wounded. His soldiers were dying, but he was still standing, still fighting, still asking how he could help. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you come?" "We are nothing to you. We cannot offer you anything in return." Reeves looked at her with tired eyes. "Ma'am, you asked for help. That was enough." He turned back to his Marines. "Establish a perimeter. Get these people to the dropships. Move." The evacuation began. Velkari civilians, shaking and terrified, were guided through the corridors by human soldiers who placed their own bodies between the refugees and danger. Every time a Scourge creature appeared, a Marine was there to stop it. Sergeant Nolan, her shoulder still bleeding, carried a Velkari child in her good arm while firing her pistol with the other. Joey Hart led a group of elderly Velkari to safety, his voice calm and reassuring even as battles raged around them. One by one, the dropships filled and launched. One by one, the civilians escaped, but the cost was high. With every wave of Scourge, more Marines fell. They did not run. They did not retreat. They stood their ground and gave their lives so that strangers could live. When the last civilian was aboard, Nolan looked around at what remained of her squad. She had started with 12 soldiers. Now there were 4. "Sergeant," Joey said quietly, "we need to go." Nolan nodded. She looked at the bodies of her fallen friends. Her family in everything but blood. "We are not leaving them." Major Reeves appeared at her side. "We are taking everyone home, Sergeant. The living and the dead. No one gets left behind." They carried their fallen brothers and sisters to the dropships. Every single one. The last dropship launched just as the station began to collapse around them. Behind them, the Scourge screamed in frustration at the prey that had escaped. On the Resolute, the crew watched the dropships approaching. The ship was badly damaged. They had lost compartments. They had lost friends. But they had held the line long enough. Captain Cole opened a channel to the dropships. "Welcome back, Marines. Well done." In the crowded dropship, surrounded by exhausted soldiers and terrified civilians, High Archivist Toral 7 looked at the humans who had saved her people. They were bleeding. They were tired. Some of them were crying for friends who would not be coming home. But they had come. Against all reason, against all logic, they had come. She did not have words for what she felt. The Resolute was dying. Commander Lisa Vance stood on the bridge, watching damage reports scroll across her screen. Hull breaches on 6 decks. Fire in the forward weapons bay. The primary engine was failing. The shields had collapsed 20 minutes ago, but the dropships were back. The civilians were safe. Now they just had to survive long enough to escape. "Helm," she ordered. "Set course for the nearest Terran station. Best possible speed. En envire. En envire. Setiver. En envire. 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 Commander, the engines are barely functional. We can manage maybe half our normal speed. The stay. 1. The stay ver 40 full. Then half will have to do. Get us moving." The Resolute turned away from the destroyed station, away from the Scourge ships that were still hunting. The alien vessels had taken damage too. But they were recovering faster than the Terran ship. They were following. Captain Cole was not on the bridge. He was walking through his wounded ship, checking on his crew. He visited the medical bay, where doctors worked frantically to save the injured. He visited engineering, where Danny Marsh and his team struggled to keep the engines running. He visited the hangar bay, where the Marines were caring for their wounded and their dead. 47 Marines had died on Station Meridian. 23 Navy crew had been killed during the space battle. The ship that had left on a routine patrol was now a floating hospital, filled with grief and exhaustion. But it was also filled with something else. 3,000 Velkari, who were alive because of their sacrifice. Cole found High Archivist Toral 7 in the cargo bay that had been converted into temporary housing for the refugees. She was sitting among her people, holding the hands of those who were afraid, speaking soft words to those who were crying. When she saw him, she stood. "Captain Cole," she said, "I do not have words in any language to thank you for what you have done. Please." Cole looked around at the Velkari. They were strange creatures, so different from humans. But their fear was the same. Their relief was the same. Their gratitude was the same. "You do not need to thank us, High Archivist. This is what we do." But why? She had asked this question before, but she still did not understand. "Your people died for us. Your ship is damaged, perhaps beyond repair. You gain nothing from this. Why would you sacrifice so much for strangers?" Cole was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to explain something that humans rarely put into words. "On our world," he said finally, "we have a saying. No man is an island. It means that we are all connected, even when we do not know each other. When one person suffers, we all suffer. When one person is saved, we are all lifted up. We do not help others because we expect something in return. We help because it is the right thing to do, because if we were the ones in trouble, we would hope that someone would help us. Toril 7 considered his words. Among my people, we believe that knowledge is the highest pursuit. We have spent thousands of years collecting the wisdom of the galaxy, but I do not think we ever truly understood this concept you describe. She paused. You call it compassion? Yes, Cole said. And courage. And duty. We have many words for it. We have only one, Toril 7 said. We call it being truly alive. In the medical bay, Sergeant Amy Nolan was lying on a bed while a doctor worked on her shoulder. The wound was deep, but she would survive. She had been lucky. Private Joey Hart sat in a chair beside her, refusing to leave despite the doctor's suggestions that he get some rest. You saved my life, he said quietly. That creature would have killed me. You took the hit for me. Nolan looked at him. That is what we do for each other, kid. I told you before. We take care of each other. That is how we survive. But you almost died. Almost does not count. She managed a weak smile. Besides, you did good out there. You kept your head. You protected the civilians. You fought like a real Marine. Joey looked down at his hands. They were still shaking slightly. I was scared the whole time. So was I, Nolan admitted. So was everyone. But you did your job anyway. That is what bravery means. It does not mean not being afraid. It means being afraid and doing the right thing anyway. In engineering, Danny Marsh was working on the damaged reactor with burned hands. He had refused medical treatment until the ship was stable. His team had done the same. Commander Vance came down to check on their progress. How bad is it? Danny wiped sweat from his forehead with a rag that was more grease than cloth. Bad. We are holding together with prayers and duct tape. But I think we can make it to the nearest station. Maybe. 10. Maybe is not very reassuring. It is the best I can give you, Commander. This ship gave everything she had. She deserves a rest. So do we all. Vance nodded. Keep working, Chief. You are doing incredible work. Just doing my job. Ma'am, same as everyone else. On the bridge, the crew watched the sensors nervously. The Scourge ships were still following, but they were keeping their distance. Perhaps they were too damaged to attack. Perhaps they were waiting for reinforcements. No one knew. How long until we reach friendly space? Cole asked, returning to the bridge. At our current speed, about 6 hours, the helm officer reported. 6 hours. It felt like an eternity. Cole sat in his command chair and looked at his crew. They were exhausted. Some of them were bandaged. All of them were grieving. I want you all to know, he said, that I have never been prouder to serve with anyone. What we did today was hard. We lost friends. We took wounds that will take a long time to heal. But we saved 3,000 lives. 3,000 people who will go home to their families because of what we did. He paused. The galaxy is cold and dark. There are species out there that prey on the weak and ignore the suffering of others. But today, we showed that there is also light. We showed that there are people who will fight for strangers, who will bleed for strangers, who will die for strangers. We showed what humanity stands for. The bridge was silent. Then, slowly, one of the officers began to clap. Others joined. Soon the entire bridge was applauding. Not for victory, but for sacrifice. For duty. For each other. In the cargo bay, the Valkyrie heard the sound. They did not understand what it meant at first. But when High Archivist Toril 7 explained, they joined in. 3,000 alien voices, adding their own version of applause to the human sound. It echoed through the wounded ship, a chorus of gratitude and respect. The Resolute limped toward safety, carrying her precious cargo of survivors. Behind her, the Scourge ships finally gave up the chase and turned away, perhaps deciding that these particular prey were more trouble than they were worth. 6 hours later, the Resolute reached friendly space. A rescue fleet was waiting for them, alerted by Captain Cole's earlier communication. Medical ships rushed to take the wounded. Supply ships brought food and water for the refugees. Engineers prepared to begin repairs on the battered carrier. As the Valkyrie were transferred to safer vessels, many of them stopped to thank the human crew. Some of them touched the humans gently with their appendages, a gesture of deep respect in their culture. Others simply bowed their heads. High Archivist Toral 7 was the last to leave. She found Captain Cole on the bridge, sitting in his chair and staring at nothing. "Captain," she said, "I must go now. My people are being taken to a safe world where we can rebuild. But before I go, I want you to know something." Cole looked up at her. "For 12,000 years, my people have recorded the history of the galaxy. We have written about empires and wars, discoveries and disasters, but we have never written about anything like what happened today." She paused. "I will make sure that this story is told. Every species in the galaxy will know what the humans did for us. They will know that when we cried for help, you answered." Cole managed a tired smile. "Just try to make us sound humble." Toral 7 made a sound that might have been a laugh. "I will tell the truth, Captain. Nothing more, nothing less. And the truth is remarkable enough." She turned and walked away, joining the last of her people as they departed the ship. Cole watched her go. Then he turned back to his damaged ship and his grieving crew. They had paid a terrible price, but they had done the right thing. That would have to be enough. 3 months after the rescue, Captain Marcus Cole stood before the Terran Senate Defense Committee. The room was large and cold, filled with senators who looked at him with expressions that ranged from curiosity to anger. Cole wore his formal dress uniform. His medals hung on his chest, including a new one awarded for the Station Meridian mission. His hands were clasped behind his back, his posture straight, his face calm. The head of the committee, Senator Patricia Wells, read from a document in front of her. "Captain Cole, you took your ship outside your designated patrol zone without authorization. You engaged a hostile force without orders. You risked a valuable military asset and the lives of your crew. You violated at least 7 military protocols." 8. "Yes, Senator," Cole said. "I did. Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Cole looked at her steadily. "Senator, with respect, I would do it again." The room went quiet. Several senators exchanged glances. 3,000 innocent people were going to die, Cole continued. They had no weapons, no way to defend themselves. They sent a distress call to anyone who would listen, probably expecting no one to answer. But we heard them. We were close enough to help. And I made the decision that saving those lives was worth any risk to my career. "Thanks," Senator Wells frowned. "The military operates on protocols for a reason, Captain. If every commander made their own decisions about when to intervene in foreign conflicts, then more people would be alive," Cole said. "Senator, I understand the need for order and discipline. I have served this uniform for 30 years. But I also understand what it means to be human. We do not stand by while innocents die. We do not calculate whether someone is worth saving. We just save them." He paused. "You can court-martial me if you want. You can take my rank, my ship, my career. But you cannot make me sorry for what we did. And you cannot make those 3,000 people unsaved." The committee deliberated for 3 hours. In the end, they found Captain Cole not guilty of any wrongdoing, citing exceptional circumstances and the moral imperative to protect innocent life. But the real verdict came from somewhere else entirely. High Archivist Toral 7 kept her promise. She wrote the story of the rescue and transmitted it to every Valkyrie archive in the galaxy. From there, it spread to other species, other worlds, other civilizations. The story was simple. When the Valkyrie cried for help, the humans came. They came without being asked twice. They came knowing they might not survive. They came because someone needed them. Species who had never heard of Earth suddenly knew about the humans. They knew about a young species from a small blue world who built warships not just for conquest, but for rescue. A species that believed no one should die alone. A species that heard cries for help across the void of space and answered with fire and fury and an impossible, stubborn refusal to let strangers suffer. The Galactic Council, which had declined to help the Velkari, watched with interest as their reputation changed. Other species began to wonder. If we were in trouble, would the humans help us too? Some species were afraid of the humans. They saw the recordings of the battle, the brutal efficiency with which the Marines had fought. They saw creatures that could be peaceful and gentle one moment, then become terrifying warriors the next. But more species were inspired. They saw something they had never seen before. A people who would sacrifice themselves for others without expecting anything in return. 6 months after the rescue, the Resolute was finally repaired and ready to fly again. Her hull had been patched, her engines replaced, her systems upgraded. She looked almost new, but inside, she carried the weight of what had happened. In the memorial hall, 70 names were engraved in steel. 47 Marines and 23 Navy crew who had given their lives at Station Meridian. Fresh flowers were placed there every day by crew members who remembered. Captain Cole stood in the memorial hall on the day of the relaunch, reading the names one by one. He knew every face behind every name. He had written letters to every family. Commander Lisa Vance found him there. "Captain, the crew is assembled. We are ready to depart." Cole nodded but did not move immediately. "Do you think it was worth it, Lisa? All these lives? For people we had never met?" Vance considered the question carefully. "I think these people thought it was worth it. They made their choice. They knew the risks. And they went anyway." She paused. "That is what makes them heroes." Cole touched the wall gently, his fingers tracing the names. "They deserve to be remembered." "They will be," Vance said. "Not just by us. By the entire galaxy." They walked to the bridge together. The crew was at their stations, ready for whatever came next. Communications. Officer Katie Dunn was at her console. In the engine room, a new chief engineer was running final checks. In the hangar bay, a new group of Marines was settling in, ready to carry on the legacy of those who had fallen. Cole took his seat in the command chair. It felt familiar and strange at the same time. "All stations report ready, Captain," Vance announced. "Very good." Cole looked around at his crew, at the ship that had carried them through hell and back. "Helm, take us out." The Resolute moved away from the station, her engines humming smoothly. She turned toward the stars, toward the vast unknown that waited beyond. As they left, a message came through on the communication system. Cole recognized the voice immediately. "Captain Cole, this is High Archivist Toral 7. I wanted you to know that my people have established a new station. We have named it Hope Station, after the concept you taught us. It will be a place of learning and healing for all species." She paused. "You are always welcome here, Captain. You and all humans. You have earned a place in our history forever." Cole smiled. "Thank you, High Archivist. Maybe someday I will visit." "I hope you will." Toral 7 out. The communication ended. Cole sat back in his chair. "Sir," Katie Dunn said suddenly, "we are receiving another transmission. It is a distress call." Cole sat up straighter. "From where?" "Unknown species, about 5 hours from here. They are under attack by raiders. They are asking for any nearby ships to assist." Commander Vance looked at Cole. "Sir, we just finished repairs. Command has not cleared us for combat operations yet." Cole thought about protocols. He thought about permissions. He thought about all the reasons why he should wait and follow proper procedures. Then he thought about someone out there, alone and afraid, hoping that someone would answer their call. "Helm," he said. "Set course for those coordinates. Maximum speed." "Aye, Captain." The Resolute turned toward the distress signal, her engines roaring to full power. The crew moved with purpose and determination. They had done this before. They would do it again, because that was what humans did. Far away, on 100 different worlds, beings of 100 different species looked up at the stars. Some of them were in trouble and did not know where to turn. Some of them had given up hope of ever being rescued, but now they knew. Somewhere out there, the humans were listening. And when you cried for help, they came through the smoke. The galaxy was still cold and dark. There were still monsters in the void. There was still suffering and fear and death. But there was also something new. Something that had not been there before. There was hope, the aggressive kind, the stubborn kind, the human kind, and it spread like fire among the stars.